So, you want to do some wallpapering? You're pretty eager to get started, aren't you? Wait a minute. Wallpapering can be fun and easy, but you'll need to know a few things before you start. Freshen up the ceiling first with Color Your World's non-splattering ceiling latex, and paint trim and doors with Color Your World Alkyd Semi-Gloss. Next, read the instructions on your wall covering to see what special tools or items you will need to purchase to do the job successfully. For instance, you'll need a non-sudsing detergent like Greaseoff to clean your walls, so grease and dirt won't cause mildew problems or poor adhesion of the wallpaper. Be sure also to rinse thoroughly. If mold or mildew is present, scrub it away with a mixture of half bleach and half water, then rinse. Fill nail holes with patching compound and a putty knife and sand smooth when dry. Then seal the areas with Color Your World Alkyd Base Primer. Prime the whole wall area if the color is very dark or if it looks blotchy after patching, to keep the colors from showing through the wallpaper. Be sure the primer you use is alkyd based, since it can be papered over in only 2 to 3 days, whereas latex paint products require waiting at least 30 days before papering over them, so that this won't happen to your walls. New unpainted drywall must be primed first. If you use latex primer for this, top coat it with flat alkyd paint before wallpapering to ensure a proper adhesion of the wallpaper. Alkyd primer on bare drywall causes a slight fuzziness which is easily smoothed away by light scuff sanding. Use alkyd primer on smooth bare wood and on cured plaster walls. If you desire to paper over old paneling or ceramic tile, fill the grooves or grout lines first with patching compound. Sand lightly, then seal them with alkyd primer, both to ensure adhesion of the wallpaper and to make the area a uniform color. What about papering over walls that are already papered? Color Your World suggests removing the old paper first to avoid seams and patterns showing through, and poor adhesion of the new wallpaper, particularly if the old one is vinyl. Dry, strippable wall coverings come clean off the wall in one step, then wash and rinse the wall. With strippable or peelable wall coverings, the face of the paper comes off first, leaving a paper backing behind. Using Color Your World wallpaper remover mixed into warm water, soak the backing with a sponge, a roller, or a flat pad applicator. Unless you have a face mask and excellent ventilation, avoid spraying on the solution. Wait 5 minutes, then with a scraper or broad knife, easily scrape away the backing. Then wash and rinse the wall thoroughly to remove all traces of the wallpaper remover and old paste. Use Color Your World's adhesive remover to cut through the paste easily. Some wall coverings appear to be non-strippable. These are stripped by first scoring with coarse sandpaper to break open the surface of the wallpaper. Now the Color Your World wallpaper remover can soak in, and after 5 to 10 minutes, the wallpaper can be easily scraped away. Then wash and rinse the wall thoroughly. So for difficult to remove wall coverings, score, soak, and scrape to remove them. If you must paper over old wallpaper, first clean and rinse thoroughly. Patch holes, secure loose seams, and prime with Color Your World Alkyd primer to promote adhesion of the new paper and to cover the old pattern and colors. Before papering over any wall that is at all shiny, apply a coat of Color Your World All Prep to give the wallpaper a proper surface to cling to. Use of All Prep eliminates sanding of shiny surfaces and can be papered over after just 2 hours. Cleanup is with soap and water. If you wish to ensure future strippability of your wall covering, apply a coat of wall size before papering. Wall size also gives the paper added slipability for easier positioning during hanging. Now that you've done the steps of clean, patch, prime, you're ready to install the wallpaper. Your starting point should be in the least conspicuous corner, since the pattern may end up not matching here. To make sure your wallpaper is hung straight, a plumb line is hung first. Measure the width of the wallpaper and subtract 1/2 inch. This is the distance out from the corner at which you will make 3 pencil marks. Hang the plumb line over the mark closest to the corner. Cover the string with a light coating of chalk. When stationary, pull straight down on the weight to make the line taut, then snap the string. A straight chalk line will appear on the wall. Before cutting the first strip, plan where the pattern should be hung at the ceiling. Cut the strip the height of the wall plus 1.5 inches at the top and at the bottom for trimming. There are 2 methods of hanging pre-pasted wall coverings. With one, place a water trough at the base of the wall. Roll up the strip starting at the bottom so it's right side up when it comes out of the trough. Soak the strip for the length of time specified in the instructions at the water temperature, which also is indicated in the instructions. Then pull the strip very slowly out of the water, ensuring that the back is fully wet. Let the excess water drip back into the trough at the bottom, then place the strip on the wall. Another method requires that the wallpaper be booked before it is hung. Place the trough at the base of a table that is covered with a drop sheet. After soaking the strip, draw it up onto the table and fold the top into the center, paste to paste, without creasing the fold. Now fold the bottom into the center also. Leave the strip, paste to paste, for 2 to 5 minutes to allow the paste to activate and the fibers of the paper to relax. Metallic polyester foils and certain other wall coverings require booking so that their seams will stay flat on the wall. Very inexpensive paper wall coverings, as well as some very expensive specialty wall coverings, should not be booked, or they'll tear too easily when hung. Check instructions on your wall covering, or ask a Color Your World salesperson to advise you. If your wall covering is unpasted, be sure to purchase the correct adhesive. Most vinyl and vinyl-coated wallpapers require a general-purpose adhesive, though heavier vinyls will require a heavy-duty paste. There are lightweight adhesives for lightweight papers, and for hanging fabrics, grass cloth, and textile wall coverings, a clear drying paste is required. With pre-mixed adhesives, stir first, then pour into a tray. Prepare powdered adhesives according to the package instructions. To keep the strip flat, tape down the top corners. Apply an even film of paste to the top half of the strip first, then fold the end into the center. Now repeat this for the bottom half. A pasting brush may also be used for applying paste. With some wall coverings, the wall may be pasted instead of the paper. Check the instructions on your wall covering. In this case, paste an area just slightly larger than the strip, making sure you miss no areas. Whether your paper is pre-pasted or unpasted, the hanging method from here on is the same. Line up one edge of the strip along the plumb line, such that the paper overhangs at the top and the bottom by 1.5 inches, and at the corner by 1/2 inch. Then smooth out the strip. The hard plastic smoother is for smooth vinyls and smooth foils. The soft foam smoother is for lightweight paper and vinyl-coated wallpapers. The long bristled smoother is for delicate textures and textured vinyls, since it won't flatten out their surface. Work from the top down and from the center outwards. Very small bubbles appearing after smoothing will likely disappear in anywhere from a day to 2 weeks. If not, a small pinprick will usually eliminate them. Try to handle the seam areas as little as possible to avoid stretching of the paper and loss of paste. If the strip requires some shifting, avoid tugging on the edges. Instead, lift the strip off the wall and reposition it. This will keep the edges from stretching. To make the strip lie flat at the upper and lower corners, make a 45-degree angle cut into the corners with the scissors. The 1/2 inch overlap around the corner should be left in place to be papered over if you plan to paper this adjacent wall also. If you won't be papering the adjoining wall, remove the half-inch overlap down the corner with a handy Color Your World corner trimmer. The ceiling and baseboard overlaps are removed with a Color Your World utility knife that has a retractable blade that snaps off in segments as the blade gets dull. Refill blades are also available. And to hold the paper in place while trimming, as well as to guide your cut, a trim guide is most useful. Place the guide at the baseboard line and trim on the side closest to the baseboard. Do the same at the ceiling, cutting on the side of the guide closest to the ceiling to avoid accidents. Try not to lift the blade off the paper in the middle of the cut to avoid having a jagged edge. Instead, keep the blade in place and slide the guide along ahead of the knife. Try also to hold the cutter on an angle almost parallel to the wall so that the sharp part of the blade can sear through the paper. If the cutter is held almost perpendicular to the wall, it may tear the paper since its pointed end is actually quite dull. So try to keep it more parallel to the wall. The moment you feel the blade tugging on the paper, stop. Retract the blade so only one segment is exposed. Remove the end of the cutter and insert the blade into it. Now push away from your eyes to snap off the old blade and replace the end on the cutter. After each strip is installed, rinse it off with a damp sponge to remove all traces of paste and water. Before cutting the second strip, check that you have matched the pattern correctly. In a straight match, the pattern repeats horizontally. In a drop match, the pattern repeats diagonally. This type of pattern can sometimes be easily mismatched. A wallpaper with a random match, however, has no right or wrong way of matching the pattern. Some patterns may, at first, appear to have a random match, but be careful. For some plain, random match vinyls and grass cloths, it is recommended that every other strip be reversed when hanging to avoid shading of the wallpaper caused by a slight variation in dye across the width of the paper. Once you've established where your second strip should be cut, hang it as the first, butting the edges together. Do not overlap seams. Trim this strip, rinse it, and after 10 or 15 minutes, very gently roll the seams flat with a seam roller, unless the wall covering is textured. Seam rolling flattens textures. When you come to a light switch or electrical socket, hang right over it. Then carefully cut an X over it and trim around it with the knife. Of course, to ensure your safety, shut off the power first. To paper around doors and windows, paper right over the opening. Then cut on an angle into the corner with the scissors. The wallpaper will now smooth out flat for trimming with the knife and trim guide. If there are cupboards to paper around, do the same 45-degree angle cut with the scissors into the corner so that the paper will stay flat. Smooth it out and trim away the excess paper. When you near a corner, measure the space left to be papered and add half an inch. Cut the strip this width and save the excess. When you hang this strip, it will overlap around the corner by half an inch. Measure the width of the leftover piece you've saved. This is the distance from the corner at which a new plumb line for this new wall should be hung. Every wall needs its own plumb line, since corners are never perfectly square. This leftover strip will cover the half-inch overlap and butt right into the corner. If, on severely imperfect corners, this strip goes back around the corner at the top or the bottom, make a score line down the corner and cut off the excess with the scissors. Do not use the knife for this, or you'll cut off the overlap underneath. This method of overlapping at corners makes the paper visually continue without looking like it has been broken at the corner. If you just continued around the corner, the crookedness inherent in most corners would cause the paper to wrinkle and go out of plumb. Outside corners are handled in much the same way. Measure the space left to be papered before the corner and add 1/2 inch. Cut the strip this width, and you will see it overlaps around the corner by 1/2 inch. Slit the top and the bottom on a 45-degree angle so it will lay flat. Trim away the excess at the ceiling and the baseboard. Then measure the remainder of the strip you cut and add 1/8 inch. Hang a plumb line at this distance from the corner. Your strip will, therefore, cover the overlap and will end 1/8 inch back from the corner, so the edge won't get damaged if someone or something brushes by the corner. If you plan on papering the ceiling in a room, it should actually be hung first. Work across the shortest ceiling dimension so the strips are not too long. To hang a plumb line on the ceiling, you'll have to secure the line with tape or tacks at both ends. Position the line out from the wall at a distance of 1/2 inch less than the width of the paper, so that the strip will overlap down onto the wall. Add 1 inch to the length of each strip, so that there is a 1/2 inch overlap onto the walls at each end also. Snip the excess at the corner with the scissors, but do not remove the 1/2 inch overlaps. Now, when you paper the walls, score and trim away the excess at the top with scissors so you won't cut away the overlaps. Papering archways is treated in the same way. Overlap the wallpaper 1/2 inch onto the inside of the archway. Then cut the piece for the inside of the archway, making it 1/8 to 1/4 inch narrower than the area to be papered, so it does not go all the way to the edges of the archway and will not get ragged from traffic brushing by. If, for some reason, you happen to damage part of a strip or somehow cut a strip too short, don't toss it away. Hang it as usual. Then take a piece of wallpaper larger than the area to be patched and hang it right over top of the first. Be careful to match the pattern exactly. Using a fresh blade and enough pressure, cut through both layers. Remove the excess from the top and from underneath. 5 to 10 minutes later, roll the seam gently. Invisible. To hang borders, soak 1 entire spool of border in the trough, and as you draw it out, fold it back and forth in an accordion fashion so it's neat and manageable. Unfold it into position, smoothing it out as you go. If hanging at ceiling height, set up a line of chairs to walk along. To join spools, overlap the pattern exactly, then cut through both layers. Remove the excess from the top and from underneath, and in 10 to 15 minutes, gently roll the seam flat. If splicing your border at corners, cut the corner diagonally and remove the excess from on top and underneath. If the border is going on top of vinyl wallpaper, you may also require the use of a vinyl-to-vinyl adhesive to ensure adhesion. When using 2 papers separated by a border, make the lower one about 1/3 the height of the wall and the upper 2/3 the height. Where they meet, do a double cut, removing the excess from the top and from underneath, so a ridge is not visible under the border. To add a final decorative flair to your room, Color Your World sells plastic switch plate covers into which you can insert your wallpaper. Some wall coverings and borders have coordinating fabrics, which really give the room a designer look. If you run into any problems in your wallpapering venture, like seams that won't stick, Color Your World has vinyl seam adhesive especially for that purpose. Dampen seams first, apply adhesive, smooth, rinse edges, and in 15 minutes, gently roll the seams. If your wallpaper simply does not want to lay flat, try booking the next strips, since booking relaxes the fibers of the wallpaper and helps activate the paste. Avoid having your wallpaper fall off the wall by making sure you apply a coat of Color Your World's All Prep or a coat of wall size before papering over shiny surfaces. Use wall size to give your paper added slipability and strippability. Also, be sure to wait 30 days before papering over fresh latex paint, or adhesion will be poor and the paint on the walls could be damaged. If the wall covering is tearing while you are trimming it, snap off the blades on your cutter more frequently and try to hold the cutter parallel to the wallpaper so that the sharp part of the blade can sear right through the paper. If, after the wallpaper has dried thoroughly for 1 to 2 weeks, small bubbles still appear in the paper, cut through the bubbles, squeeze in some seam adhesive, and gently roll smooth. For very tiny bubbles, a simple pinprick will allow the air to escape. Most small bubbles will, after several days, dry out on their own. To avoid having mildew grow up through the paper and spoil it, surfaces must be cleaned and rinsed thoroughly before papering, especially in kitchens and bathrooms. Remember, use a solution of half bleach and half water to remove mildew. Shiny or discolored areas are generally caused by excess adhesive that was not rinsed off after hanging each strip. Use Color Your World adhesive remover to correct this. Also, be sure to change the water in the trough every 2 to 3 strips to keep it clean and at the correct temperature. Seam rollers should be used very gently so as not to flatten out the seam areas. Do not use seam rollers on deeply textured or embossed papers. If you run into any other problems, please be sure to speak to one of Color Your World's trained and knowledgeable salespeople. Defects in wall coverings are rare, but check your wallpaper first before you begin papering to see if there are any flaws. Your time and effort are valuable. Finally, to make sure you will get years of enjoyment out of your wallpaper, maintain it by removing any splatters or grease marks immediately with mild soapy water so they don't get a chance to soak in and stain. We at Color Your World want to do our best to help you be 100% satisfied with your home that is papered in wall coverings purchased at Color Your World. Simply follow our easy steps of clean, patch, prime, install, and maintain. And be sure you purchase from Color Your World all the handy tools that make hanging wallpaper fun and easy. Color Your World, the expert's choice. Your choice, the best choice.